back to So There I Was podcast. I'm your host again, Travis Womack. Today's special guest is Rob Prah, and he's currently a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve. Next week will be his 23rd anniversary. It's always a good time whenever we cross that next one, especially when it's the even years. So, but Rob, welcome to the show, and glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's awesome.
So, I in the wonderful world that is LinkedIn, where I spend most of my time. Every now and then, about once a quarter, I'll send out a kind of a mass, hey, if you want to be a guest, I will accept pretty much any veteran there is, and haven't said no yet. And Rob responded with an appointment and said, hey, this is the story I've got, so I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And just give everybody kind of I think I've got 2 or 3 guests now so far. So there I was in 9/11. I think yours is going to be an awesome story. So I look forward to hearing it. So, but tell us a little about your career before we get started.
Yes, hey, I'll get started with give my little disclaimer. I'm a reservist, as you
Yep.
mentioned, Lieutenant Colonel. This is in my civilian capacity, so nothing I say is I'm not talking for the Department of Defense, any of that fun stuff.
Yep.
But I'll just throw that out there unofficially. But
Always smart.
yeah, so yeah, down that road before with some folks and things like that. But anyway, so I joined in high school. I joined the Army National Guard my senior year. I was looking for uh, basically a couple ways to serve my country, pay for school, and just a way to kind of do something else. I wasn't sure where I really wanted to do in life, so I joined the National Guard. This is you go back January of 2001. So if you put yourself, dates and some of the historical timelines and things like that, you can imagine not a lot going on really.
Yeah. No.
So January 2001 I joined, graduated high school. That semester I finished up playing football, which was my first year. I played soccer my whole career, did a lot of sports my whole life, and was just active in the community as just a volunteer firefighter, things like that. Didn't really have plans for college. I knew I wanted to go to school, but I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. My mom was a nurse and my dad was a steel worker, so I didn't really know where I would fit in or what would work out for me. So joined the Army National Guard. The benefits were great, still great for anyone looking at that. But it was what really caught my attention was that big $5,000 bonus.
Oh man, you're raking it in now.
And I had no idea, about taxes and any of that fun stuff. So I think I ended up with like 3,500, whatever. But they also paid for tuition. A lot of the National Guards still pay for 100% tuition, depending on the states where you live, but in the schools you go to. But I started to think about going to school then, with that 100% tuition. And so that's what I really ended up doing that summer. We went to all the graduation parties. I think I was fortunate. I remember sort of being able to pick my basic training date with certain flexibility, but I wanted the end of the summer. I didn't want to lose that like any high school senior would. I
Right.
didn't do split up, so I wanted to kind of go at the end of the summer and basically still hang out with my friends and whatnot. So did that. And back then, and it's changed over the years, brings back a lot of memories, thinking back when I was thinking about this earlier today. But back then, what the National Guard did in Pennsylvania was they had what was called a pre-IET, initial entry training.
Yep.
And we went for, I think, 5 days. It was at Fort Indian Town Gap. We went out there and they taught us the basics, rifle, marksmanship type. I don't think we fired any weapons, if I remember. We disassembled, assembled, basic PT, drill and ceremony, rank structure, all that real
Oh
basic
yeah.
stuff. And they just wanted to basically have us kind of ready to go. I think I'm sure someone ran the numbers and it helped with folks quitting or dropping out,
Throughput.
adding
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
adding extra stress to what already was going to happen. But it was successful. It was kind of cool because there was about 20 of us from Pennsylvania. We ended up going basic training together. We knew each other, and went to basic training somewhere around August 12th, somewhere around there. Went to the old 30th AG on Sand Hill, and we were there for a good. I feel like it was 4 weeks. I'd have to look at the actual calendar, but it was about 4 weeks. We weren't allowed to do anything. No PT. We really didn't really know much about
Yeah.
PT anyway. I can't even remember what the heck we did back then in terms of PT. Some of the movements. It's been so long, but we weren't allowed to do anything. No
Right.
running. They had a little, if I remember, it was a little trailer or something where you went in, you bought your shower shoes, anything
Mm-hmm.
you needed to do. You weren't allowed any candy. You still had to eat at the dining facility there, at certain hours. Remember, we had mail call. Funny story there was every night we had mail call, and we weren't doing anything. So of course, family sending you letters, and you had plenty of time to write letters. We
Oh
didn't have
yeah.
we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have internet. We didn't have none of that technology stuff. But there was this one drill sergeant. I'll never forget him. And he was just he must have been on the way out of retiring, or maybe ETSing or something. But he was the 30th AG, one of the 30th AG drill sergeants, and his
Yeah.
name was
Yeah.
Sean. And I don't remember. Like I never even tried looking this guy up. He wouldn't know me from anybody else. He might remember my name, but he was always like at mail call. Never forget it. We had a certain area where our little platoon, I think we went, but he would say, Prah, and he would hold it, and he would just hold it. Everybody would kind of laugh, and he'd look at him. Now we weren't in basic training yet, so he would look at him, and then everybody would stop, and then he would say, "Brah," and that was like mail call. It was like, looking back, it was kind of cheesy, but it was just something to,
You
he
remember it
probably
though.
got more of a kick out of it, than we
Yeah.
did. But we were there for a long time, and it was boring as hell. I mean, it was just like, there were stories of, and I don't know what was true or what was not. Unfortunately, they said there were some folks that took their life. I don't know whether it was true. I could believe it, but
Yeah.
I don't know if it was true or not. But we heard all kinds of stories, and you know how it is, even in the
Oh
military in
yeah.
general, right? Regular job at home, rumors start and everything. But we basically were stuck there, and we couldn't do anything. We had no idea where we were. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't have a map, didn't have a
Yeah.
phone. I couldn't tell you if I was in the middle of Fort Benning or on the edge, which we were. And I remember we could hear a highway, but that was basically it. And really, my training started the next day. We went down. It would have been somewhere. I think it was September 9th or 10th, and we got in the old cattle cars. You remember?
Oh yeah.
Crammed in there, and we didn't have our bags because we loaded the bags up, and they drove them, which was like maybe a half a mile down the street, if that.
Right.
And to 247 was the battalion I believe we were at, and they dropped us off. We did the old bag shuffle, find your bags, start
Hmm.
over. They jerked us around for what
Oh
felt
yeah.
like hours, and it's just a good time. But really, I joke about it, but that was kind of like the last. I think looking back, even today, was like the last time where like there was really not a care in the world. I had no reason to quit. I had no reason to want to really do anything else. In my mind, I said, got a 6x2 contract. There's
Yeah.
nothing going on. What am I going to do? I'm going to come down here. I'm going to go back to school, do my, my weekends. The older folks still around here, and they still say, this always kills me. They say, "Hey, do you have maneuvers this weekend?" Like
Maneuvers.
we're out, yeah, like the reserve. That's like a term that older folks,
Yeah.
older parents say maneuvers, like you're
That's
out there like doing something, with like a race
bivouac.
or something,
Yeah.
But that's what I thought it was going to be like. And the next day we were in the barracks there at 247. Would have been coming into the day of September 11th, and we were upstairs, kind of all just hanging out, reading letters, writing letters. You couldn't go anywhere at that point. And right down the street, I'm not sure where you were on Sand Hill, but right down the street, you could walk down through this path. Was the actual one of the bigger little kind of PX type things
Yeah.
on Sand Hill there, and which was kind of the entrance to Sand Hill, which I knew now, but I didn't know back then. And you were allowed to get down there like once a day in a formation. The drill sergeant had to take you, whatnot. But we did
Yeah.
all that stuff, and that was it. It was terrible, that leading up to that. But September 11th, that morning, we had breakfast chow. I'll never forget it. We went to breakfast chow, and we came back, and we were upstairs, and 8 o'clock in the morning, and the drill sergeants came up. It was after Shanksville. This was after Flight 93 happened, because I think people were still trying to wrap their heads around what was going on. And they came upstairs, and it was like a little bit of a frenzy. And they said, "Hey, if anybody wants to come downstairs, we got a TV." And I can't remember. I don't want to say what they said, but it was something along like, "Hey, something's going on. Like we're under
Right.
attack or something like that." And we all came running downstairs, and there was like no disciplined order where I say like we're in a formation. It was just everybody huddled around this very small TV, and we're sitting there, and we're kind of like, we're 18-year-olds, most of us. You have a
Yeah.
few older folks in there, but we're like trying to figure out what in the world is going on. Is this what's going on? Because we didn't have we didn't have phones or anything. And make a long story short, 9/11 happened, and we're just sitting there, we're waiting. And that whole day was kind of like chaos, because where we live today is a little bit about 15 minutes away from where I grew up. which is only about an hour from where Shanksville is, where Flight 93 went down.
Right.
And so, in the grand scheme of things, the flight paths for a lot of the going to Pittsburgh International and just the way that the paths are, we hear them. They fly right over our house still today, and
Yeah.
you know they might be off 2 or 3 miles, and you could still see them. But that path, you know, just depending on where they go, it could have been closer to our house. You know, so when that went down, I'm sure my parents, they told me after it happened that they were all worried, like, well, what's going on? Because my parents weren't in the military, and so they didn't have that, you know, little bit of understanding of what might be going on. But nevertheless, they basically said, hey, if you live in Pennsylvania, anywhere in Pennsylvania, Virginia, anywhere down in DC area, or New York, you were allowed. We were given that extra. I think it was like unlimited, but it wasn't like, you know, an hour. But you were
Yeah.
given. It wasn't the standard.
More time. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple minutes that you were
Get off
given
the
where
phone.
they're hovering over your back,
Yeah.
you know, listening. But we were given a few minutes, and we did that, and we were able to talk to our family, like, you know, hey, everybody's okay. It's still on the news. No one knows what's going on, and it was kind of weird because it wasn't like, hey, I'll call you, like, you know, like how you do today, or like, hey, I'll call you back when I hear something. That was
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
after that, we went back in. We kind of watched some more of the TV, but it wasn't, the drill sergeants didn't have us watching TV for the next 20 hours. You know, we didn't sit there. We went about our day, and what happened was we were on like a lockdown. Obviously, the base went to probably like a Delta or something,
Right.
and everything was kind of locked down. And here we are. We're not even in basic training yet, technically. We don't really know anything, right? And they put us on like these security posts of some sort. And now I'm not gonna try to make up a story here or anything, but I don't really remember exactly what I did. But I remember standing around like on the corner of the building on the exterior. Now, mind you, this is September, so it's still hot as hell
Oh yeah.
in Georgia,
Georgia. Oh yeah.
and you know the humidity and the heat, and you know we're out there just dying, right? And we're on like some sort of security detail. I don't think it lasted long for us that day. It might have went until like dinner chow or something like that,
Yeah.
because you know the base was locked down. What are you going to do? You got hundreds of privates at every battalion there. What are they going to do? Just stand there?
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, that's how that day happened. And then the very next morning, so in our mind, as you can imagine, we're trying to figure out what in the hell is going on. We have no idea. Are we going to be stuck here even longer to start basic training? Because back then
Yeah.
they told us there's a summer surge. And do I believe it? I don't know. I have a hard time finding out that there's, you know, maybe 750 soldiers that are in a backlog too. You know, all the ATARs reservations or whatever they did back then. They know when they're starting, when they graduate, what's the throughput, you know, graduation dates. This stuff's all worked out years in advance. I don't know if I buy that, but nevertheless, we're there. We're stuck
Yeah.
there. When are we starting? The next morning, September 12th, we went downrange.
Yeah.
And it was, I'll never forget it. It was, you could tell that even with us and with the drill sergeants, that drill sergeant Sharp with the Prah, you know, joking
Yeah.
around, everybody's
It was
still
gone.
trying to, you know, that you're just trying to have fun in an environment, you know, as much as you can. But you just spent the last 4 weeks with some of these guys, and now like something's going on. Like
Yeah.
we're at war, right? We don't know what's going on. They're mobilizing units. They're sending folks overseas. You know, all the stuff, the big stuff with the you know stuff that I understand now with like air movement and vessels and troops and cargo.
Yeah.
You know, all logistics and stuff that you just don't know as a private. All that stuff is like now it's happening.
Yeah.
And when we got there, the drill sergeants, the tone was different because you had a mix, and you probably the same thing. You had some that they're in 6, 8, 10 years. There was no deployments going on. You
Mm-hmm.
had some of them that were in, you know, maybe they're the sergeant first class types, the first
Right.
sergeants that were in Desert Storm and Shield, right?
Right.
Those are some of those guys. I don't think we had any from, you know, Somalia or anything like that. But I remember some of the guys on their right shoulder, they had the old Hell on Wheels
Oh
patch,
yeah.
you know, like those were the guys that were like, they were like, this is serious, because they, you know, they're thinking, okay, it's been it's been 10 years, we're going back to the Middle East somewhere, you know, and they're like, they're hungry, you know, because they know in their mind, they kind of think they know what's going on and what's about to
Right.
happen. And it's kind of history. Every decade or two, something flares up, and it's like,
Oh
you know, you
yeah.
still have a generation of the older guys and gals, and you know, the younger folks. The tone was just different. Like
Oh
it was,
yeah.
and I kind of hit on it before, but that was like the last time where I felt like because I was like kind of a class clown in a way, in high school, just jerking around, and I had
Yeah.
good grades, played sports and everything. But like my life changed,
Oh yeah.
and I think for every single person there, it changed every one of us. And those drill sergeants, there was a purpose with being at Fort Benning, I think, at that time, because you knew that like every little bit of training you were doing, that it meant something.
Yeah.
Whether it was the cheesy classroom training, learning about the Army values, which today still,
Still goes.
it still goes. Like there's something that it feeds into something bigger than, just what are the 7 Army values? Okay, I know what they are, leadership, whatever, and defining those. But from the basic first aid classes,
Yeah.
all the other
Which
stuff
have
that we,
drastically changed.
yeah, it's all, yeah, significantly over the years. And
Yeah.
but those lay a foundation for you to build upon. And I just think about how crazy it was being there during 9/11,
Oh yeah.
because
That's crazy.
I could have been there 6 months before, been a reserve unit called up, it would have been a little bit different. But I felt like being there at that time, it's like kind of being on a football team, and you have an outstanding season, you make the playoffs, and now you're in the finals. You
Yeah.
mean like you came through, like you started with them. You weren't on the team, you weren't in middle school and watched the high schoolers do it. You weren't there beforehand, and
Yeah.
then you just fell into a great program. You were there, like it happened now,
Yeah.
and it was right in front of you. So it was just and like I said, it was awesome because all those folks that we were at pre-IET with, if you remember talking about that, we were all together. So we were all from Pennsylvania. We had 4 platoons. I'll probably mention this, trying to see what it was like for you, but we had 3 platoons. And then the fourth one was, they called it like the Ranger platoon. Those were the guys that had RIP in their contract. They were
Yeah.
going to airborne after. They
Yeah.
were, some of the guys that had that in their contract and, ready to, do some pretty cool things afterwards. And so I was in third platoon, and obviously across next to us was the quote unquote Ranger guys over there.
Yeah.
But it was like you knew that like everything you did, from the turning blue ceremony to the whether or not it was 25 miles at the end of that,
Yeah.
when we were done, that last thing we did, I remember my feet were tore up. But there was no like, I don't remember anybody quitting in my platoon, back then. The downfall with where I look at, some of the soldiers now that I see is, they're always on their darn cell phones, right? And they're,
Yeah.
they got pictures. I don't have TikTok and half that other stuff, but the only thing that I regret is we didn't have any way to communicate with those people. Like
Yeah.
when we left basic training, you're 18, 19, who's going on AKO and trying to like plug in names and say, hey,
Yeah.
where was that guy at?
I did that.
Did
I
you?
did. Yeah, I sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I have
Yeah.
a where's it at? It's behind me right here somewhere. I actually have my basic training like yearbook thing that they it's you get, Yeah, same one, same one. Yeah, exact
Yep.
same one. So I actually went through it on AKO right before I retired. 'Cause when I still had access to AKO, I was like, I've got, I was on leave for like 106 days. So I still have my ID card and still had access to my email. So I was like, this is where I'm there trying to find out like who's still in the army for my basic training class because there was 284 of us. I think that's too many. No, whatever it was. Sorry, I'm thinking about my high
Yeah.
school class. There's a whole bunch, right? Four big old platoons, and there's like 8 guys still in the army.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, we got, and like most of them were, I think 2 or 3 were like warrants. I was a major, and then most of them were like sergeant majors. I'm like, good on y'all. So
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
pretty funny. Sorry, so that
No,
cut us
I
off.
have that because
I
that's
love,
one of my little show and tell things.
yeah,
Looking to see what the heck I have, but
yeah,
so I didn't know. We just didn't have a way to communicate with them, and it
yeah,
just kind of. That's one thing I wish technology wise. I don't like technology really much now, but if I could, that would be something I could, ask for to have.
yeah.
But yeah, that was a time because it was just like, I, I've told people like this, and like when I give classes and stuff, I'm like, that's when the shit hit the fan.
Oh
You
yeah,
knew like you didn't know what you were getting into when you got home, because now you still have whatever it was, 9 plus 4. I think it was like 4 weeks AIT where you like just kind of went right in. There was no like, hey, you're
yeah.
off for
It's
2 weeks.
for
You
y'all.
rolled
Yeah,
right into it.
yeah,
I can't remember. I think we had a weekend or something, or a day or two or something, but you rolled right into it. So you didn't know what you were getting into, because a lot could happen in that 4 months from, you know, September 11th to December 12th, which was graduation date.
yeah.
So, but I remember, there was a lot of stuff that happened that some of the stories really kind of changed my attitude with officers, with NCOs, mostly for the good. But there I was one day. I'll use that as my first one. So there I was one day, and I say all this because it changed my life. But I was never a long distance runner.
Yeah.
And behind me, I have my Peloton back there. We got during COVID because gym was
Everybody
closed.
did.
Yeah, when it stocked me down, crushed me. But because I thought I was gonna get some nice money there. Oh, the sweatshirt here, you recognize that,
Oh,
right?
I was going to comment for those who can't see. He's rocking the old PTs now, the old
This is the
sweatsuit.
original. It still has my
Yeah,
initials,
yeah,
my first and last name initial, and then the last four of my social on the
yeah,
back. But it's a little tight. I still have it. I don't think I could throw it away or give it away. I have
yeah.
a hard time with that, and I still have the pants that have the stains from cleaning weapons and all that. But
Exactly.
this I'll wear occasionally because I'm still in, and I don't wear PT jackets when I go to the store or stuff like that. But this I feel like I'm there. I feel
You,
like I've
you,
kind of earned that
you can buy
right
that.
now.
You can buy that at Ross,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
replica at least. So
yeah. But
that's awesome.
so there I was. It was probably a month and a half before graduation, and we had Alpha through Delta running groups. Alpha being the fast folks. I mean, those were
Mhm.
guys who were probably 11, 12-minute 2 milers, and then there was the Delta, the slow ones. I was passing my PT test down there, the old push up, sit up, and the 2 mile run. I was doing that around 15.
Yeah,
Which was probably good. The fastest I ever ran was when I went to OCS, but at 13 minutes. But I was never a long distance runner, and I'll never forget this first lieutenant. He was our company XO. He went out for a run, and we didn't know he was with us. And I don't even know if he was actually running with us or if he was like some of those drill sergeants that would like run super hard and then peel off, and then they would go down around the block and then jump back in because you don't know, you're not like looking around where they're at.
yeah.
And I think they do those tricks, but I was never a drill sergeant, so I don't know. But he come up and he started just tearing us up, the Delta runners. And I was in the Delta group. He says, "You're never going to graduate." He says, "And if you go to a unit, they're gonna run you out of there. You're never going to make it if you're running this slow group. Nobody should be in a Delta group." And I was like, "Damn it! Like this is like easy. I hate running. I want to be in the Delta group." And I was kind of pissed off because like this officer's out there yelling at us. And I don't know if it was like a scripted, like, hey, you got a month or so left. Let's get the first lieutenant out there to be the XO, the bad guy. And he comes out
Probably.
there, and he was just chewing us up. And that was like the only time. But it was like, all right, man, I got you. Like I'm gonna pick it up. So I ended up bumping up to C group, and I ended up finishing Bravo group because I could still never run the 5-minute mile pace that they were running in
Right.
Alpha. But I just remember that lieutenant just like lighting us up, and I felt like looking back and when I tell some of these stories that I think it was scripted, I think it was intentional,
Oh
but
yeah, absolutely.
I also think that there's a pucker factor with him too, because he's a basic training infantry qualified XO, and folks are deployed. Now this is November, so folks are getting deployed, and all this stuff's going on.
It's
So
about to
he's
start.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, because he went through IOBC, whatever it was called back then, and just chilling. I mean, they went through it uh, and did his thing. So I think that for some of them people, there was a lot of vested interest in making sure they're sending us out with the right attitude.
Yeah.
And I feel like
The game changed.
it did. It not for us individually, but for as an organization. I truly
Yeah.
believe that the organization changed because you now knew what you were kind of getting into, with the exception of the combat and all the stuff you were doing. But you knew that this was real.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the big once over of like my basic training at
Yeah.
9/11. It's interesting because over the years, one of my other things I'll show you here was, so there was a guy that the college I went to in Pennsylvania, he graduated in '93, so he's a little bit older than I am, but he just retired with 30 years of service here in 2013. So he just hit
Well,
that. He was a full bird colonel, retired.
awesome.
He spent a lot of time in the 101st. Ranger qualified, just a lot of hula stuff he did. But I remember let's probably screw the dates up. It was somewhere around 2011, 2012, something like that. He got a hold of me and he says, "Hey, I'm taking over a battalion command at Fort Benning." I'm thinking like, Kelly Hill, something like that. Well,
Yeah.
he ends up in a basic training uh, battalion command,
Right.
right? So he ends up telling me later, hey, it's 254, which is where I was at. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. Well, I ended up going down there and visiting him. And I think I might have been yeah, I would have been a captain at that point. And I went down there and he showed me around. And it was pretty cool to see like where I went to basic training. Not a
Right.
lot has changed there. And I don't know what they've shut down or, reflagged and, all that stuff now. But he showed me around and he gave me a tour. He had one of the drill sergeants there show me around. And, we kind of chatted. And again, this is as a captain, just somebody, 10 years out. But it was just kind of neat because now I'm outside that 6 years that I thought I was going to be in. And at that time, I had
Yeah.
11, 12, right? But he gave me a coin, which was kind of cool. And this is one of my favorite coins. It's just a battalion commander CSM coin, but it's
Yeah.
254. And so I went down there and got a tour of that, basic training site again to see it. And it was just kind of cool to kind of go back.
Yeah.
So the other funny story, this is actually prior to that, and this is hilarious. I thought of this the other day because my dad went to, I think he went to lunch with this guy's that I'm about to tell you, his dad, they're best friends. So
Awesome.
my dad has a best friend that he went to high school with, and his son was I think he was a Cav guy, and he was out of Carson for a long time, and he ended up taking a drill sergeant tour. I don't know why, but he took it down at Fort Benning, and I can't remember the battalion. I was going to try to look it up, but I think it was like 219, 119, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, no, I was down there for, if you remember, they changed. It wasn't IOBC, but they called it like Bullock. They had like the Bullock 2,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
all the branches.
Bullock 1, Bullock 2. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So I went down there for Bullock 2. Was supposed to stay there for Bullock, but at the last minute in 2007, I changed to Intel, which was at that time was probably better off for me. But he said, "Hey, come down and this is hilarious." And this is like, so there I was, like
Yeah.
literally, this is hilarious. So he calls me and says, "Hey, come down and visit me." He says, "If you have one of those running vests, remember they had those vests that would
Oh
like
yeah.
it would say DS Sharp, for
Oh yeah.
example,
Oh yeah.
staff sergeant." He says, "If you have one of those," he says, "wear it so like if you're coming up on the company area or whatever, at least somebody will see you."
Right.
I didn't have one at that time. And I wasn't about to go down to Ranger Joe's and
Buy
Commandos if it was
one.
or whatever,
Ranger
and buy
Joe's.
one. So I so I go down. I'm in PTs, the same PTs everybody else is wearing. This is like breakfast time, and I think it had to be a weekend because I wasn't in class. And he says, "Come down and meet me at this location." So I knew where I was. I knew how to get in. I wasn't. They're all set up the same. They were all the same building
Right.
structures. So I go in, and it was probably 150, 200 yards away. There's a drill sergeant. He has the vest on, and I have my PTs on. Okay,
Game over.
and it was like November. Okay, so I had the pants and the jacket on. It was a little cold down there, and and I'm walking. He says, "This is some drill sergeant." He goes, "Private, what are you doing?" And I'm like walking closer to him, and as we get closer, now we're within like maybe 100. He goes, "You better be a parade rest." Well, I'm trying to figure out like I'm a second lieutenant, okay, which is nothing, okay. I'm
Right.
trying to figure out how do I say without like you don't want to be disrespectful. What do I say to this guy? I'm not going to yell 100 yards down there with
Right.
a thousand people. What do I
I'm an
say?
officer.
So I go like this, which is probably not the best thing. We're walking towards me, and I go like this, like trying to like pump the brakes, like calm down a second, right? Oh, he loses it. He loses his mind, screaming. And as I get up closer, I was like, "Hey," "Drill sergeant." I could see his name on his tape at this point. I said, "Hey, drill sergeant." I said, "I'm here looking for Sergeant First Class so and so." I said, "He told me to come down here." He goes, "Are you serious?" And he's going like this. He said, "He's in the chow hall. Get in there." He goes, "But come with me. Come with me." He says, "I'll take you in there."
No
So we
walking
get
alone.
yeah, I go in there with him, and now, like I said, he was screaming, because he
Oh
thought like
yeah.
some was going rogue, walking around,
Which
and
happens, I'm sure.
yeah, I go in there, and my buddy's in there, he's E7. He goes, "Hey, what's going on?" And he don't even say sir at that time, right? Because he's
Right.
just like excited to see him. It's the first time I see him in years, probably since we were maybe high school. And we walk in there, and his buddy goes, man, he goes, I about lit this guy up out there. And he's like being all animated about it and just
Right.
screaming. And there's privates eating. They're all eating in there, right?
I was
So I
like,
ended up sitting with him. And so we did all the stuff. We ate chow there and we left. And he showed me his office and all that fun stuff. At the very end, like when it was like time to like, I'm gonna go do my thing and I'll meet you. I think I
yeah.
met him the next day off post to watch a Steeler game or something like that. But he said, he goes, hey man, he goes, next time, he says, you got to wear something or I'll meet you somewhere else. He says, you can't do that.
Yeah. You
You can't
can't do
do that.
that.
Yeah.
Never
But
again.
yeah, that was a funny betting story there that was just kind of hilarious because that drill sergeant was about to lose his mind.
Oh yeah. It's the few times I've ever been, I was on Sand Hill for basic airborne school, obviously, and then I didn't come back to Benning until I went to OCS in 2012. So it was a 9-year gap for me.
Oh wow.
And when I was in OCS, we're on OCS kind of like goes back and forth of like you have freedom and you can go off base, and then there's complete lockdown. And it kind of so I was in there in the lockdown phase, so we can go anywhere, and I hated it, that part of it. So like when I graduated, some of my friends were like, let's go over to Sand Hill, and I'm like, no, 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 no. Like the last thing I want to do. I mean, it'd be kind of like cool to see, like, oh yeah, that 150 is still there, you know, or whatever. But like, I am not going over there in uniform with a whole bunch of brand new pinned second lieutenants. Like, this is a bad idea. You know, my
Yeah.
ego does not need that.
Yeah, I won't say too much. You probably read between the lines, but like the Army's changed a lot over the years,
Oh
and
yeah.
as much as I like to, especially if I go to some other base that I'm going through, or I have to go there to see like something more of an official capacity,
Yeah.
I just try to avoid it because I don't want to be that old guy now, 23 years and, still young and still feel good, just to sit and criticize because I know the Army's changed.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. So I just kind of don't put myself in that situation anymore. Never really actively
Well,
try.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's that, and there's knowing that it changes, but there's also like we forget things. Like it's really funny. I remember when I was a recruiter in 2008 or nine. I remember very well. I was at this guy's house. His son's a senior in high school. This guy's a Vietnam vet. He deployed 3 times to Vietnam, you know, and wasn't even a draftee, you know, which is even crazier. And I'm sitting in this dude's living room, and he's telling me, you know, oh, Army's gotten weak in these days, and it's just blah blah blah. I'm like, well, okay, what are you referring to? Let's have a discussion then. You know, if this is gonna prevent your kid from joining, what is it? He's like, oh, we didn't get no damn cell phone call home when we were back. I'm like, cell phones didn't exist in the
Yeah.
70s. What the crap are you talking about? Like, of course you couldn't. We didn't have the technology, man. Like,
Yeah.
I went to be trained over three. I had a cell phone. Like, I had my own. I remember I had Sprint, you know, because I remember having Sprint to Sprint calls were free. It was the
Yeah.
greatest thing ever back then. You know, it's a big deal in college. And I remember putting it in a bag. I didn't get access to it because there's like 4 of us that had one. You
Hmm.
know, I was like, but like, yeah, now we have iPhone didn't even exist back then. iPhone
Hmm.
didn't exist until 2007, you know. And I mean, the Motorola Razor was like the coolest thing ever invented for it was like the number one selling phone for 4 or 5 years in a row, you know. And I think how the Army changes is we forget like
Hmm.
what was available, you know. So you mentioned the training became serious, like doing like the medical stuff. Like I remember very well, like it was yesterday, doing like getting the green like straps and like a stick or something, right? To like tie to like make a splint, you
Hmm.
know, and doing it was called the Eagle skills test, I think is what it was,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and doing all that, and then like then I get to a unit like, oh, this cool thing now called a tourniquet. I'm like, that's a whole lot easier. This is the same method, easier application, you know, and but I've always it's hard to say, you know, after 20 years and you're, you know, 23 and people, um, eh, how do you phrase it? Because like it's the worst thing that's ever happened in 9/11. But honestly, for our army, I think it's one of the best things ever happened. As tragic as it is to say that, because like when you got out of basic training and got to a unit, like you had a flak vest, maybe,
Hmm.
you know, I mean, our equipment is unbelievable nowadays,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think about our radios and trying to do like just to get an ANCD, a fill, and it's a simple, just all that stuff is like it went from being this massive catastrophe, like, hey, if you're the RTO, life sucks for you, and these batteries are like, little footballs that they carry around, to where now it's like, no, we have something, it's just about a basic Gatorade bottle, and it works,
Yeah.
it works the same. But I think all those things, I think a lot of stuff, at least for the Army, I can't speak about other branches, though the F-22 Raptor is pretty cool, I hear. But
Yeah.
we it's I think it's definitely helped in justifying like the need to improve, because we were kind of a false front, I think, in the late '90s, of like our perennial power of ability to, now we're, technology wise, I think we're leaps and bounds ahead of everybody. But
Yeah.
there for a while we were kind of neck and neck. I'm like, no, we need to improve on this a little bit. So, but well, John, or sorry, it's called you John. My email's right here and it has John on it, or somebody else. Rob, this has been a lot of fun. I would I think there's so much interesting to see, like basic training, or people that were in like, I was in college, obviously 9/11, but I think I've talked to a few people that were in like West Point, you know, like the senior class of West Point.
Yeah.
Like it just got real quick your senior year. Like branch day became a thing real
Yeah.
quick, and I think it's always interesting to reminisce and look back, and that's crazy. Um, I think the funniest thing, what you were saying though, is pulling security. Because I remember like it was yesterday being in 30th AG, and that little, like that gray area of holding, where the only
Mhm.
thing you can do is be in the bay, eat, and sit around and have towel popping contest. Like there's nothing else to do. And then like go pull security, like I don't know where my shoes are at. Like
Yeah,
what do
they probably said something like, the brigade or something from the post, said, hey,
Yeah,
make sure you're secure, your buildings are secure, no
yeah,
visitors. And, what are you going to do? You got drill sergeants are like, well, I mean, what are
yeah,
we doing? Like, what the heck's going on? We don't even know what's going on. And they're like,
yeah,
private, get out there and pull security. We're like, what?
yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah, they give the only command we know how to give. But like it's funny, like things like they made you don't you call home. I'm like, and like now we have this thing called OPSEC.
Right.
All like, but before that day, we knew not to go say that. Hey, we're going to go on the patrol at 3 o'clock, and we're going here. Like everyone kind of, hopefully, kind of understood that. But you're
Yeah.
calling home, and so what are you going to do? Is like, all the sex, as I call it, kind of became a thing that day. So it's crazy to see how we've changed, and um for the better, I think, majority wise. And there's always things that we can debate on if it's better or not, but it's I think at the end of the day, the Army is stronger, sadly, because of a horrible tragic event. So,
Yeah.
but I'd love to get you back on here. I see you have another story you want to share sometime, but I would, for the sake of this episode, I'd like to, I think it'd be more fun to come back and, reading your little synopsis you sent. There's probably more than one person involved in that story. So I think we
Yeah.
definitely need to get both of y'all on. So I think it'd be more entertaining. So, but for those out there that are new, definitely like, subscribe, and if you want to be a guest, by all means, reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn and pretty much every other platform there is. I'd love to have you as a guest. And Rob, thanks again for your time, and best of luck in your adventures, and whenever retirement comes up for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, the Army's been good to me and my family, and it's yeah, we'll see how many more years we can go, but it's been a great experience.
Awesome, man. Well, see y'all on the next episode, and we'll see y'all then.